Alright, let's do. My mom doesn't even like me eating. I know.
Where'd you write that at? Alright, did you guys write the standard? Today we're gonna factor quadratic expressions to reveal the zeros of the function it defines.
I need a little review on history work because I forgot to do it.
I have a question for you. Looking at number 2, out of A, B, and C, which one is a quadratic expression? Which one? A, B, or C? Will, you said B? Yeah, you're right. It's B. So, this one where A is squared, that's what makes this the only quadratic up here. So this one honestly is the most relevant for the curriculum and for higher level math. These multivariable ones are just not as relevant as the quadratic one, but we're gonna spend our next section is just quadratic. Okay, so you're working on factoring by grouping A, B, and C, which is what we just started yesterday. It's called grouping because step 1 is to split it into 2 groups. There's no GCF across all 4 terms. Split it up into 2 groups and see if that'll help. So my first 2 I will write next to each other, and then I'll do a big space and I'll write the next 2. And then after I do the groups, then I try to take a GCF out. Since there wasn't a greatest common factor across all 4 terms, you can try 2 and 2. Khalil, what's the greatest common factor in our first group? Do they have anything in common? They have a G in common. And if you remove the G, you're left with F minus 5. In our second group, Georgia, what do they have in common? They both can divide by 4. And yesterday I said, what can be helpful is setting up. Did I set up the fraction yesterday too? Yeah. If you want to set up a fraction to help you figure out what's in the parentheses, it can be helpful. Here the 4's cancel. We have F. 20 divided by 4 is 5. So this is an important moment. This is our checkpoint. The parentheses match. We know we've done it correctly. Match. So our last step will be to bring the GCFs together and keep one matching set. How could we check that? We could FOIL it out. We could multiply it out, and we'll get exactly what we started with in letter A. Kind of annoyed with letter B. It's not in standard form. I like that. It's kind of better for factoring, so I'll leave it.
And that's remember B? Isn't the variables can be flipped on each one?
Yeah, wouldn't this be better this way?
Yeah.
I'll just go with it like this. You're right. When you look at your.
Because then it's gonna be like 6 and 4 plus 7.
The reason that's happening is because it's not in standard form, right? The constant should be at the end. Like your variable should descend. So your GCF in your first 2, Tony? They both have A. A little harder. What's in parentheses, Mikhail? A plus 4 would be left. So you take an A out, and you're left with 1A and just 4. And what's the GCF in the second set? Asher? What do these both divide by 6? And what's left when you divide by 6? 4 plus A. So Patrick says, wait a minute, these are switched. Well, I'm happy it's addition. If it was subtraction, switching them would be complicated and might require factoring out a -1, but same thing. So that would be, what property would that be when you just reorder something? Commutative. I mean, it's either associative or commutative, but it just changes order. That's the commutative property. You're allowed to do that. And we have A plus 6 and A plus 4. So you FOIL that, and you get what you started with. Ready for the third one? Too many variables? Just a polynomial with 4 terms. They didn't give it a special name. Quadranomial. They should have called it, but they didn't. 24ty minus 18t. Does it work? Has anybody factored it successfully?
It's 4. No.
6. 16. What? 16, yeah. They said 16.
Yes, 24 divides by 6, and so does 18. And they both have the variable t. So yes, you'll factor out a 16. I like to set up the fraction so I can see like what's left inside the parentheses. 24 divided by 6 is 4. The t's cancel, there'll still be a y here. 18 divided by 6 is 3, and the t's cancel. What's the GCF in the second group? 1. You have to put a 1 outside the parentheses. Okay? No GCF. Use 1. There's a couple in your homework. Yeah, 4y minus 3. They match. So your answer, 6t plus 1, 4y minus 3. And that was yesterday's lesson. For review. So let's look at your homework then. Let's see who did their homework correctly.
Don't you love homework, Patrick? Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah.
When you can do it at school.
Yeah.
When you understand it.
That's
When you don't understand it, it's pretty much awful.
Well, it's going to be school. I always do it at school. How dare you, Lizzie?
I'm seeing quite a few people not doing the last step. Like, almost everybody. Unless I'm reading something wrong. Are you guys bringing this and this in together?
Yeah. Oops.
This and this go together to be the first parentheses.
I do that.
You keep one of the second. So if your answer doesn't look like this, it's wrong. If you didn't pair up the 2t and the -1, you did it wrong. Like you're at like 50% credit. You don't finish it.
How do you do the other one? No, my hip hurts. You only do 19? How do you do 19? How do you do 19?
I thought you were saying you did.
No. Are you?
So 19 is what our notes is on today. I'd like you to look at it and think about, well, why would the answers be 0? Well, these fancy brackets just mean there's 2 answers. 0 works in this equation, and so does 8. Quadratics often have 2.
Miss, why does X not work? How do you do 19?
X is in there. What number for X will work? No, 0 or 8.
Oh. No, 0. So we can't find the variable as a factor? It'd be what? No. And 23. Okay.
Alright, so the point is if I put a 0 in here, 0 times -8 does equal 0. If I put an 8 in here, 8 minus 8 is 0. 8 times 0 is 0. So you're trying to figure out like what value for X makes the equation true. So let's take some notes on that. Okay. That's okay. Uh-huh.
Good thing I do all my notes.
Some people are successful writing everything, and some people don't have time to write everything. You know, they just don't write that quickly. So for people who don't write very quickly, I say don't write it all. Like just try to learn it and watch it.
How are we still on 8-5?
This topic of factoring takes up the majority of all high school math. I mean, it's just like feels like all there is at some point. Like all we do is factor. Algebra 2, you factor the whole year. Factor, 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 factor. People who can't do it, it's a really, really bad day. Today's notes is on something called the zero product property.
Oh man, I know
product property is annoying.
It's always 0.
Yeah, anything. Well, no, it's a little bit backwards. Like we're doing everything backwards. So, what we're saying here, you don't have to write the property. Don't feel like you have to write the property, you guys. You can title your notes 0 product property, but you don't have to copy everything in this box. What I want you to see is this example. And I want you to think about Dominic, really, what could A or B be in order to have a product of 0? A or B must be 0. So I could say that A equals 0 or B equals 0. We don't know. So these are facts. If it's a product, then one or the other of the factors has to be 0. And in fact, both of them could be 0. It's possible A is 0, then it'll always be true, and B is 0, it'll always be true. So based on that, if you have an equation factored, for instance, this equation here, well, it was presented to you in bell work as an expression, but if I make it equal 0, then I would be able to say, well, consider this first factor A and this second factor B. I would say, well, either A plus 6 equals 0 or A plus 4 equals 0. You follow that? So with that reasoning, I could just solve these little mini equations. On this side, I would subtract 6, and on this side, I would subtract 4. And now I have solutions. I know that A is negative 6 or A is negative 4. And I've solved an equation now. So if you can set your equation equal to 0 and it's a product, you've got this set up as multiplication. You can set those factors equal to 0 and solve. So try it here, you guys. You guys have an equation. Consider this little factor here, A, and this little factor here, B. This is pretty much stating A times B equals 0. No, we're solving an equation.
Hey, miss. So, are you like automatically supposed to like kind of figure out the digits?
You're supposed to show your work. So you kind of separate it. You make this one equal 0, and you make this one equal 0. Because one or the other or both must be 0. No, we're just going to put a line here and just solve for x. Here I have a plus 2, and I see x is 2. And then how do I solve this one? Add 1. 4x equals 1. Divide by 4. And keep it in fraction form. X is 1/4. It's both of them.
Oh, wait, how did that equal 0? Oh, 2 times 1/4 is 0. How did that equal 0?
You plug them in.
Oh.
So like, how does this one equal 0? It does. So when I plug it into the second one, 4 times 1/4 is 1.
Pardon this interruption. At this time, the juniors are returning to class. Thank you.
You'll have your day.
You don't want it to be there.
So this one, this number would make this be 0, so that would make the whole equation 0. And this number makes a 0, so that makes the whole equation 0, right? So either one works. The answer is x is 2 or x is 1/4. Yep. I'm just kind of disappointed in the problems in your workbook, but go through it.
Are they gonna be easy or are they gonna be like too hard?
What is this?
What did you just do? Oh,
Well,
no.
I'm gonna make these x's.
No. She's changing the problem, so she's disappointed in that.
The problem is given to you too easy. Okay? So, you guys, factor by grouping.
Oh, now you gotta group.
Ignore the equal 0. Group those and factor it.
You had to put an exponent. Just group them. Oh, but they both have X.
Okay.
This is absolutely.
What in the world happened now? I swear, I look like some Texas.
Will, are you flabbergasted? Because I am. Yes.
Alright, so this is what I mean by group them. I just wrote these two here, separate from these two here. So they're in two separate groups.
Is that how you group them? Yeah, but then you say like equal 0.
Just ignore the equal 0 for now.
Oh, we're doing
Now, what's the greatest common factor of the first two? 3, and they both have an x. What's left in parentheses? Good. What's the greatest common factor in the second two? They're the same. I just made x's because s's are weird. Doesn't matter.
Alright, well, so I'm gonna change it.
What do you mean, why are we doing greatest common factor? That's what we do when you factor in your group, right? We're just doing yesterday's assignment right now, right? We're just doing Bauer. Right, Will? So now, put the GCFs together. 3x minus 9 and x plus 2. Right? Okay. So this has been factored successfully. Now solve using the zero product property.
What is that?
You just make those things equal 0.
So this is called A, and this is called B, right? And if A times B equals 0, either A equals 0 or B equals 0. So we're going to do 3x minus 9 equals 0. You set up two little equations and you solve them both.
X equals negative.
So this equation has two solutions, either 3 or negative 2. So, do you see the big picture that we're putting together here? I'm not sure that you do.
I found it. I know the big picture is.
All right.
I don't think we're ever going to use this in real life.
The big picture. Shh. You guys be quiet. Be quiet. Yes, I definitely can. There's a million ways. So this is a quadratic equation. It has x squared, right? In order to solve a quadratic equation, you must first factor it, and then you set the factors equal to 0. That's the whole process. So the most common, well, for instance, so quadratic equations make parabolas. So these solutions show up on graphs as x-intercepts because if you think about it, most equations equal y, right? So if we were to think of this as a function, when y is 0, these are x values. So we have these x-intercepts at 3 and negative 2. So this is a U-shaped graph that looks like this. So you guys are working towards graphing parabolas, U-shaped graphs that are quadratic.
Can you write a question on the board?
Could you tell me the connection between this graph and that equation? This is what I was just talking about.
It's on negative 2 and 3.
They're both
the solutions.
Those are the solutions to this big equation. So at some point, I'm going to ask you to make a graph of this. And you're not going to use slope or intercepts or rise over run. You're going to have to fully understand this curve here. It's different than an exponential curve where you just made a table. It's a little more complicated. So this is a whole big picture. You start with a problem, you factor it. You solve the factors, and those factors show up on the graph. It's all related. Okay, we'll do another one. How did this start? Does anybody know why I scratched that out and rewrote it? It was too easy. They were giving you right to the parentheses. It was actually too easy this way. Sorry, I lost it.
Yeah, I am right. Where are you? Check my card. What's the state first?
That's a really hard one.
I'm
Is
trying
that
to
a
do
nice
thing.
word? No, it's derogatory.
Sorry, you're not a winner. You're welcome.
Tony, don't bring the PTSD.
I won't. I just said that because I can't say like you suck.
You just said it though.
Well,
You guys said
I do not like her. Miss, can I answer?
You can factor that. You can answer the question.
I knew it too after.
Miss, how do we factor this if there's only two terms?
Did you say it again, Dominic? Your ID is in your chemistry class. No, just go between classes. So now I'm concerned for you. Can you factor this by grouping?
No.
Then how will we factor it?
Just solve it.
Did you already do it? Cannot group. The other thing we did, we just factored by GCF. It's a binomial.
Just
I definitely do that.
So when I look at just these two terms, what would the greatest common factor be? 5 and x. Ooh, I want to take a negative because this is negative in front. Correct. That's a great evaluation, and I was just skipping that. So if I divide a negative 5x out of here,
Wait, miss, what do we do about that? To the
One. No, it'd be plus 1. Oh, minus 1. Yeah.
It's basically
Miss, what do we do about that?
so this is x squared, and I'm taking one x out. So I've separated them. That's literally the whole point of factoring, is to separate the x squareds. Because with the x squareds, you're stuck. You can't solve it. So you separate the x squared so that you can solve it. That is a big comprehension moment. It's a good question.
just x?
Alright, so this is equal to 0. Okay. So now instead of two sets of parentheses, this little guy is considered the A part, and this guy over here is considered the B part. Set them both equal to 0 and solve them. Olivia, you're not with it. Let's get with it. Look, it's nothing new. The only thing new here is I put this little part, the GCF, and I say equals 0. And then this one, I do the same thing. I say equals 0. Okay? And then you have two little mini equations. Just solve them. I'm just adding two problems to the end of your problem. Solve your little mini equations. So here to solve this one, I would divide both sides by -5. And I see one of my solutions is 0. Over here, I have to add 1. Divide by 8. And I see that my other solution is 1/8. Was anybody able to get 0 on 1/8? Yeah. So this quadratic goes through here. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1/8. And it's negative. It opens down. Looks like that.
Interesting.
Well,
It's a non-linear.
that's kind of a bummer, actually. It's really more like
It's
that.
very non-linear.
What time is it?
9:04.
Okay, one more. I just want to do one that looks. Oh, I really want to do these word problems. I guess we'll do them tomorrow. This one. A lot of your homework looks like this, y'all. Your homework looks like this. This is we're using effortful learning today, even when we don't want to do it, we do it.
Oh man, I just clicked my notebook.
Alright. So guys, I have to add a step to the top of this. So like the last one I said put into standard form. Ooh, and make equals 0. Gosh, this is a lot. It's a lot to think about. So how would I make this equal 0? We don't normally make things equal 0. I'm going to minus this 4y from both sides. So in order to make it equal 0, you got to cancel something out. So I actually like the 0 on the other side. So which side do you guys like? Your 0. I think they've all been on that side. Right side. Okay, guys. So now we're going to GCF. What's the greatest common factor of these two? And why? Now that we have factored it, we make them both equal 0. Put your line in and solve both equations. Y equals 1/3. Sorry, I ran out of room on the screen. Ooh, that's a lot. That's a lot to expect from you guys. So your homework might be confusing. You should definitely use the next 8 minutes right now in class to work on it.